Can you walk me through the Apollo 13 and your role in that, and maybe how this whole, how that culture kind of applied to that, emergency?
Well, let's just put it this way. I remember giving a talk to an IT group in Chicago, and I didn't prepare for the question, but the question was, I don't know if I have it here. The question was, how long did it take to make all the decisions that we had to make on Apollo 13?
Uh-huh.
And I finally got around to doing that, and it was less than a day.
Wow.
Less than 8 hours. We had every major decision. I don't have a slide here. Every major decision that we had to make were all made in that short time.
Incredible.
Well, here's the Apollo 13 decision timeline. 55, 54, 53, the tank exploded. And let's see, 66, 63 hours, 79. I would say it was a day.
Mm-hmm.
We had it all thought out.
Yeah.
As a team, engineering and flight operations people together.
Yeah.
It wasn't just flight operations people like myself. Although we were the executors,
Mm-hmm.
we had to execute whatever procedures they came up with. So at least you could know that the decisions were made very quickly. They were so obvious that we couldn't fire the big engine because it would probably hit by the panel that blew off the service module.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to use the lunar module descent engine, which is not as powerful as the big engine at the aft end of the service module. It was bing, bing, bing. It was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to go around the moon. We had to do a burn that put us in a free return. In fact, Apollo 13 was the first mission we didn't have a free return, which meant if the big engine didn't fire to put us in lunar orbit, we would just go around the moon and come right back to the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Because of lighting considerations at the landing site, they had to change the trajectory so that we were not free return in case the big engine didn't work.
Oh, okay, I see.
So when the decision was made to go around the moon and come right back to Earth, do a burn engine to put us on a non-free return, on a free return trajectory that is intersecting the Earth.
Yeah.
We didn't do it. We would have been 20,000 miles out of nowhere.
Whew. Man.
So.
Yeah.
And then when the decision came down, we didn't have enough consumables left to use in the lunar module. We had to speed up the return. We did another burn to speed up the return.
Uh-huh.
Amazing, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what was my job? Well, as I said, my job included the cryogenics stored in the service module of the spacecraft. And all what came over me, but it turns out 47 hours into the mission, we had a problem with the quantity readout from oxygen tank number 2. Now, these are cryo. These are like liquid.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's no big deal because we had the 2 oxygen tanks or 2 hydrogen tanks, and they were plumbed together. We just opened the valves on both tanks so they would feed at the same time.
Okay.
And we had a procedure developed that allowed us to turn the heaters off in a tank that was getting out of balance too high. And made a procedure so we would use the tank that was feeding too much, turn it off, and feed the higher tank down until they were within 2.5% of each other.
Okay.
And that was the mission rule.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a simple little thing.
Yeah.
So we didn't care. I mean, we could always, if we were within those requirements, then if we lost any of the instrumentation on one tank, we could infer what the bad tank was by looking at the good tank because they were identical and coming down together.
Right. Smart.
So that had happened. So 47 hours. Who knows why maybe a solder joint came loose. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Probably was more of what happened on pre-launch. when we overheated the tank.
Yeah.
Anyway, so at 49 hours, we said, let's try another stir. So there were two little fans, I should have told you, there was a heater core tube and a fan at each end. And we would turn the fans on to homogenize the material in the tank.
Uh-huh.
What happened was in zero gravity, the cryogenic material would stratify in different densities.
Oh.
And the transducer that was reading those quantities, was this full diameter tank, would get faked out. So we would turn the fan on to stir it up and make it homogenize it so we get an accurate reading. That's called stirring the cryos. After that, they took the fans out, took all the wiring out, and said, we don't need that. We'll just shake the spacecraft up a little bit and that'll take care of you. So these things go away when you don't think you need them anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what happened was, at 49 hours, they decided, let's try it one more time. They turned the fans on in oxygen tank number 2 one more time to see if maybe the reading came back. It didn't. So they let it go and didn't do another stir until, what was the time? And we were in lunar orbit, 90 hours? I can't remember. I can't remember when we stirred the cryos. I'm going to have to remember this anyway. 55 hours.
Okay.
55 hours in the mission. And the plan was the crew would stir the cryos after they woke from their sleep period every day.
Uh-huh.
Or the post-sleep checklist, little things you got to do, housekeeping things. And they would turn the fans on, all 4 of them, 2H2, 2O2, and stir the cryos. And we dutifully on the ground would note the correct, accurate readings and plot it to make sure that the quantity was being utilized at a rate that would get us through the mission safely.
Mm-hmm.
The consumables was very important subject, obviously.
Yeah. So
we did that, and for some reason, I decided before I got off shift, before the crew went to sleep, began their sleep period 1 hour during the last hour of my 8-hour shift.
Right.
And then they would sleep, and the next shift of flight controllers would babysit the spacecraft until the crew finished their sleep period. And the last hour of their sleep period, then through the post-sleep housekeeping things would be done.
Right.
And let them what happened while they were sleeping and stuff like that. And then the next shift would come on and perform the duties for the day. Anyway, and just for some reason, being a good flight controller, I wanted more data. So, back in those days, we hand plotted stuff, and we had slide rules, which I still have mine.
Yeah.
Computers were just barely coming online.
Yeah.
The computers we had were big 360-75s, mainframes down on the first floor that IBM sold us to do all the trajectory work and data processing work.
I see.
We didn't have, if we want to get, and all the consoles are all hardwired. Every light, everything was hardwired. If you wanted to change something, it took forever.
Jeez.
So, not now. Now they're all workstations.
Yeah.
You can configure any way you want to.
Right.
So anyway, I said, well, I just want more data before I go home. So I asked the crew to do, and you'll hear that in the air-to-ground voice transcript. That's part of my book.
Mm-hmm.
Hear all that. I asked the flight director, Gene Kranz, I said, before the crew goes to sleep, I'd like them to give me a sterile 4 tanks. And they did, and then the tank blew up.
Yeah.
And I felt terrible about it. Of course, my job was to recognize what the hell happened.
Yeah.
Which was wild, because it was disbelief that tanks don't blow up. They just don't. They're solid titanium, and they don't fail. But it did.
Mm-hmm.
We did that. There was the wiring in the tanks was all scorched, and cracked, and they were twisted pair. So it didn't take much of a jiggle for the 2 wires to short out and a spark was created, and a raging fire ensued, and in seconds, that was the end of everything.
Yep.
So, and it was the last hour of my shift. And I suffered psychologically for that because we flight controllers, we're not taught to be that way, but it's implied.
Yeah.
Have to be perfect, and I wasn't perfect, and it bothered me. And it turns out that if I hadn't asked for that stir then, and it didn't occur until after the crew had turned on the lunar module using up all the consumables, or they were down on the lunar surface, or they went to pull out the lunar module on the way to the moon, and they couldn't pull the lunar module out.
Yeah.
Because of space, it was just flopping around. And it turns out it couldn't have been a better time for it to happen. Something made me ask. Something made me ask for an extra stir. If I hadn't done that, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows what would have happened?
So was that?
The old saying is, once you feel badly about something, no good deed goes unpunished, is the old saying.
Yeah.
Well, turns out that it was a good deed, and I didn't have to be punished for it.
Yeah. So, I mean, was that comforting later to kind of realize that?
Oh, it took a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had some bad dreams about that, and it's all part of the neurosis of trying to be perfect.
Oh man.
The dreams that you remember are waking dreams, not dreams that occur while you REM and all that. The waking dream is the last thing you dream, and you remember it. And I would relive the damn thing.
Man.
I'd wake up. Waking dream. It happened all over again. The tank, blah, 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 and I slunk off the console, and this went on for 2 weeks.
Wow.
Every morning. And one morning at the end of the 2-week period, it always reminds me of learning to drink scotch. It took me to learn to drink scotch by having a scotch once a day. This guy said that's what you ought to do if you want to learn scotch, and I went, and it worked. Anyway, so I had this dream. Once I said, "Oh no, here it comes again," and so we asked for the stir. The tank, the fire occurred in the tank. I could see it was, and I was making all the right calls. I said, "We got to pull the breakers, the heater breakers on panel 226. We got to do this. We got to do that." It looks like the tank blew up. I did everything perfectly. The end result was exactly the same. I never had the dream again.
Oh, okay. Very interesting.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. Whew, man.
It fixed me.
Wow. Yeah, that is crazy. The effects that would have on you, and I mean, it's just so.
Because I thought I was supposed to be perfect. Remember?
Yeah.
It was my fault. I thought I was supposed to be perfect.
But I mean, was it really your fault? It was kind of inevitable that would have happened. It was just a random.
No, it was guaranteed it was going to happen.
Yeah.
See, the fan wiring that it was attributed to, I don't know if you understand what twisted pair is. They're small gauge wires because there's little fans.
Yeah.
And the wires are twisted around for support. They weren't shielded. And when we did this, if you read up on the failure, the engineers on the ground burnt the crap out of that tank.
Yep.
They raised the temperature in the tank on 2 occasions to over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was that hot.
And it charred. And they duplicated the failure on post-mission after they took all the data, the fine-tuned data we could get after the mission. Every nanosecond of data, and recreated everything. And it was the wire. I don't know if I can take care of it here. I have a talk I give, the anatomy of the failure.
Oh.
Everything you could ever want to know.
Yeah.
Where is picture of the wires? I guess I don't have it in this one. Anyway, it was a twisted pair, and the Teflon insulation was cracked, wide cracks in the wires. It wouldn't have taken much, and it didn't take much. If I hadn't asked for the extra serum, it probably could have occurred when they woke up. They did their post, or maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe it wouldn't have happened until they turned on the lunar module and started using up all the precious consumables.
Mm-hmm.
It could have happened when they were on the ground.
Yeah. Whew.
We probably couldn't have docked.
Yeah.
If he could have docked, they would have died.
Man. So how long after the explosion did you make the call to not land on the moon?
Well, that was part of the mission rules. Once Gene Kranz, the flight director, effected the mission rules, all I had to say was, it looks like we've lost 2 fuel cells. We ain't landing on the moon.
Okay.
I didn't say it. All I had to do is report on the system. Kranz reported then on the implication of that, even though we all knew the implication that you don't land with 2 out of 3 fuel cells dead, half of all your electrical equipment dead. Mm-hmm. You're not doing it.
I see. So that was just the protocol. You guys all knew that it was not going to happen.
Yeah. Okay. And you can hear it on the intercom loop traffic. You'll hear me still.
Yeah.
So it was about 20 minutes before we all, Kranz and I, because we were talking about it all, it became very clear that, the old saying that denial is not just a river in Egypt, because everybody was in denial, that especially Kranz was in denial. So was I. But 20 minutes was over.
Yeah. Well, that's the mindset you needed, was that, you were in denial that you guys were going to fail, right?
No, I thought it was just a funny with the instrumentation system like it was on Apollo 12. Uh-huh. And we'd solve everything with a switch flip like we did on Apollo 12.
Yeah.
It's going to happen here.
Yeah.
It was and it was the last hour of my shift. That's the reason I called my little Apollo 13 talk the longest hour. Was it, takeoff on the movie title. And it was just the last hour. I was ready to go home.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it worked out pretty well because the relieving shift, Glenn Lundy's black team, had already come on board over a half hour ahead of time.
Oh.
And we overlapped. So Clint Burton, who was the relieving ecom for me, had already read the console log. He already was totally up to speed in what we were doing.
Good.
And we already had other people coming in. So I went home.
Yeah.
I went down and looked at data, and I saw the fire in the tank with that real fine-tooth data that we had coming in.
Yeah.
And it was all there.
Man. Damn. Well, Cy, this is awesome. Yeah. I love hearing this story from you. It's really awesome.
You'll if you get the book, make sure it's got the CD with it. If you're buying a used book, the CD is really important.
Yeah, I cannot wait to check that out. Yeah, so just so we know, so everyone listening, your book is Apollo Ecom, Journey of a Lifetime. Yeah,
right.
And that's, is it on Amazon right now? Is it available?
You can probably find a used copy of a hardback, or you can find the softback, which is what we printed afterwards. We print on demand that way.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that works, but there's a machine. You put the files in one end, and a book comes out the other end. It's totally amazing. But it's the softback version.
Uh-huh.
It's been updated a little bit. That's the one you get. They all have the CD with it, which has got stuff on it you would never find anywhere else.
Nice.
Let's see what else came out of that. And Amazon should have it. If not, you can always contact. Where did you get your copy? Do you know?
I saw it on Amazon. That's where I got mine.
Okay, yeah, you can find it.